Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Brandon Brake, and I'm a director here at Edgile. Many of you may have attended some of our webinars in the past. We've had a series of them and will continue to do so through the end of the year. We do publish a 6-month out view of our webinars, so please continue to check our homepage for additional content and webinar material. Today, we'll be covering the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Workshops. Let me take a moment to introduce our speaker. Bob Moore is a managing director for Edgile. Bob has a dual role. Most of the time, Bob completes project work in our Microsoft practice of about 65 people in the South and the Southeast. Bob is also the co-manager of our Microsoft channel practice. Both Bob and I work extensively within the Microsoft ecosystem. For today's agenda, we'll walk through these cloud adoption workshops and demonstrate the value that they bring to your organization. This is a 30-minute webinar. We will leave time at the end for everyone to ask questions. We can also schedule time individually to dive further into these workshops. To kind of set the stage, if you're not familiar with Edgile, we've been in business for almost 20 years now. Edgile was recently awarded by Microsoft out of 6,500 partners as the Microsoft Security System Integrator of the Year for 2020. We have 3 integrated practices, and those practices focus around these 3 disciplines, and they do overlap in some areas. One practice focuses on identity and access management. We also have a practice that focuses on cloud, security, and information from a security perspective. And we also have a practice that focuses on integrated risk management, or sometimes called GRC. We have a tendency to focus from a strategy-first perspective. And what that means is we focus from a strategy and overall roadmap perspective for clients. We try to bring to bear our knowledge from a high level, and in some cases, we even help clients select a technology product and also help them with an overall strategy from a business perspective. We do tend to specialize in highly regulated industries such as telecommunications, energy, healthcare, financial services. And what you see on this slide are our 3 disciplines and practices. And now Bob Moore will talk more about these Microsoft funded workshops and our approach.
Thank you very much, Brandon. I appreciate it. And my name is Bob Moore. I work, as Brandon said, in our Microsoft practice primarily, but the 3 circles that he just showed you are really critical to overall enterprise transformation and this significant cloud adoption that we're going through now. So identity and access, governance, risk, and compliance, and then understanding and being able to adopt cloud resources in a secure and compliant way are all critical to what's happening now in this major transformational shift. So in our Microsoft world, we partner very closely with them, and we're a gold partner in a number of different areas. So they've released these cloud adoption workshops. So it used to be when you wanted to do a strategy, you had to spend weeks together and you had to scope out all the different processes that were going on in the organization. But it's different now, because now it's more of an adoption of an existing platform, and it's more adopting your processes to the platform. So what we were able to had to do over weeks, we can do in pretty much in days. So that's what these workshops do, and they're focused specifically on the technology. But we're going to focus a little bigger than that, and that's why we call this a partnership between Microsoft and Edgile, because what we bring to the table is that ability to look across the enterprise and to work through an adoption program that way. So we use those in combination with our enterprise framework, which I'll show you in just a second. So I wanted to give you a little context of seeing the big picture. So these are really deep, intensive workshops. So it's not like they're presentations that are put on by, they're not sales presentations. They are actual, heavy duty workshops that are delivered by our senior architects and senior engineers. And we've done about 20 of them. And there's a common theme that happens with them because they're so technology focused, as you'll see here, it's security, compliance, and identity. we end up working with that functional group within the organization. But sometimes we miss the really the greater picture, that this is an integrated platform, and the capability is working all across from endpoint to cloud to application. And it's very important for planners to be able to see that big picture, then look at the specific functional technology. So that's the way we approach this. We come into it with that enterprise view and then dive into the technology. And it used to be too that, you know, when you look at the platform, there are reasons why you wouldn't adopt, you know, a Microsoft across the board. Understood. But I don't think those reasons are any longer a functional basis. You know, they lead in 5 of the major magic quadrants of Gartner for endpoint, cloud access security, access management, information archiving. They've really done, you know, they've done a good job in investing and putting most of their product components into that upper right quadrant. So there's other reasons. There's commercial reasons. There's why should we change if this is working? You know, sometimes we have to wait until the contract's up. But really, most of the organizations that are probably on this webinar and that we work with own the suite, and they own it in some particular way, but they own most of the technologies we're going to talk about today. And so the view becomes more of a, you know, when do we do this rather should we do it? It just makes sense to be able to offload this type of work to a security specialist that is aggregating all of this data and aggregating the economic power of all of these clients. So I mentioned that we were going to look at our identity framework. So this is the way we come into a project, really any project with any client, and we're looking across risk and compliance from our GRC practice, identity management, authentication and authorization, entitlement request, entitlement authorization, data protection and attack management, mobility, endpoint, remote workers, securing information out to the edge, and then monitor and reporting. And all of that is overseen through a governance program. So when we start working in these workshops, we start here, and then we'll narrow it down. And this is an example of how we do it with the identity workshop, where now we're going to focus on identity management, authentication and authorization, and entitlement management. But always with that idea of, we're not just looking at a single technology, we're looking at a platform, and we're looking at how that integrates in an enterprise environment and can be roadmapped for full adoption over time. And this is the landscape. It's you know, if you look at the left-hand side, it's endpoints, remote users. It's securing them with EDR and AV using Defender for Endpoint, which used to be Defender ATP. Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which is a combination of Windows 10 and Intune. And then in this kind of in the center left is Azure Identity Protection, which is what's coming from Azure Active Directory, and it's risk-based authentication. So you're using conditional access policies, but stepping up, you're using the risk-based policies that are drawing from the real-time data from 6.5 trillion signals that Microsoft's investigating in their security landscape, and that's made available right to your tenant here, and it's looking at things like device state, location, and risk, making decisions in real time very quickly on access control. Might kick off a MFA, it might not. From Sentinel and aggregating signals and signals intelligence across the platform. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but all of these security components are sending signals up to Azure Security Center and to Sentinel that get aggregated across the platform, a single pane to analyze this information. And then in entitlement management and access reviews, automated access reviews of who's accessing what within the organization, privilege identity management. single sign-on to applications. We'll get more into that in a second. We have self-service password reset on here, but I really think that that's pretty much going away as passwordless authentication is ramping up very quickly. Most modern devices have TPMs. That's how we do it. I can't remember the last time I had to put a password in as we authenticate and do our business. And then down to the on-premise environment. This is we're in a hybrid state, and these tools are looking across on-premises and identifying threats and suspicious behavior, and all of that. Then on top of it is data and information protection and information management, because after all, that's what it's all about. It's all about protecting the information within the organization. Okay, so that's the setup. Now I'm going to talk about the 3 workshops. There's actually a couple more I threw in the end that they just released. They're pretty cool, but I'll talk about the 3 workshops we're going to cover today. And the first one is identity. Always the primary focus. Now, it's not always the first one we do, but identity has to be the core part of any cloud security solution. And in this workshop, it's designed to demonstrate the capability of the platform to enable a zero trust framework. And the core of that is Azure Active Directory, and what they call Premium, which is a licensing thing. But that's the touch point to risk-based conditional access and scanning of the dark web and compromised credentials. That gives you the finest grain authentication measure in the zero trust framework. Add that to MCAS, and then you're looking at session control too. So it's not just authentication. Then there's a bunch of continuous access validation coming up too that does session control. So we'll focus first in this session on zero trust. After that, and we've kind of talked about where your organization is, what solutions you have in place, what might be limited by some of the existing solutions and options to transform into Azure Active Directory on the Microsoft platform. Then we'll look at applications, because the beauty of it is you can apply modern authentication to any application that's in your portfolio. And that's from a SaaS application, pretty easy, maybe a company web application, but also these AS400 legacy applications, either through Azure App Proxy or through something like an F5 gateway. So there's numerous options there, and there's no reason why you can't be providing this elevated access control to those applications, which in most cases are carrying some very business sensitive data. I've heard Microsoft say that organizations run on the richness of legacy applications. Now, I was looking this morning just so I could get prepped, and I saw that they added something to this webinar, to this workshop. It's called Identity Transponder. And it's a very interesting competitive product where it's able to scan and find applications in your environment that is using a third party, and you can think about who that might be, third party application for authentication. And then it inventories that, and it enables a roadmap to migrating that authentication to Azure Active Directory. So that's the only one that has like a little bit of a build to it, this transponder. This one's pretty quick, doesn't take a lot of your effort, a lot of time from you. It's a couple sessions. The way we do it is that we'll set it up well in advance, so we're on everybody's calendar. We've got a couple questionnaires so that we're capturing current state and we're not wasting your time, going through what applications you have doing what. And so we'll quickly baseline during the meeting, confirm our understanding, and we've also captured by then, we've captured your focused interests, and that's where we're driving at. And as I said, these are our senior architects that are doing this work, so there's a lot of value here. So we'll go through in the first session, and then switch to the second session where we'll do application and hope maybe we've gotten an application inventory from you earlier. Then we give it takes a little bit, but then we give you a readout, and Microsoft has a formatted readout. and it's pretty much about the technology, but we do more than that. So we'll give you the benefit of our experience in your sector for enterprise transformation, what other organizations have done and what we recommend that you might do based on your specific conditions, constraints, and what the sector's doing. The second one is a security workshop, and across this platform are what they're called now the Defender suites, and it was advanced threat protection for all you Microsoft licensee people out there. So it was Azure Advanced Threat Protection, but they've changed that, they've dropped that. So it's now Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, and Defender for Identity. Identity is the one that's doing that user-based analytics across your directory, and it does things like looking for compromised credentials or other threat components, looks for domain dominance. So we'll walk through how that works. We'll walk through endpoint and the EDR and AV components and how that ties up with Intune for a mobile endpoint management solution that might be able to take out some of the existing ones that people are talking about taking out now. And then I think one of the most cool ones is Office 365. So there's an embedded player in that space, but there's a lot of really good things that the Office 365 solution brings, and it does phishing scanning, spam, malware, identity proofing, but it also has native integration with Office, with OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, so native integration into those systems, and not just looking at the content of the email, but the links and attachments. So very, very robust. So we'll go through all that in this workshop. There's two other things. There's the Sentinel module and the threat check module. So the Sentinel module is something that happens a little bit in advance. Here, why don't I show you? We'll start earlier, so we'll do the engagement. But before we get started, we'll come in and we'll have this license package from Microsoft that we'll turn on for you, and it's read only, so it's not going to do anything. It's not going to take any proactive action, but it will look across the landscape and it'll begin to collect data. And some of the things that we can find, or that it finds through this 2 to 3 week analysis, can be really interesting. And so when we come in to do the workshop, we'll go over what these tools are, but then we'll pull up the data and begin to look at the data, and there's usually some actionable things that come out of that. And we do the same thing then in the end. We'll give you a technology focused report that maps to what's existing now and makes recommendations for that transformation. And then we'll also give you our view of enterprise adoption, and we'll throw in risk management in there. So the last one I'm going to cover today is the compliance workshop, and this one's my favorite. I don't know why I have a favorite, but this is my favorite. It's a little different twist than an infrastructure or security solution. It's looking at the data that resides in Office 365 primarily for one part of it, and it's helping the audit, compliance. One case, we're working with the general counsel in making more efficient discovery and management of cases. So it's very effective in using artificial intelligence and machine learning to narrow the false positives and to assist in capturing data. And when you think, much of it now resides in Office 365 in the cloud, and it's indexable and it's traceable. So integrating that into your business process has been something that's been interesting for some of our clients. It can also do insider risk, and we ran this. This is one of those where we'll come in and we'll set it up early. We ran it at one client, and it identified a certain individual that had like 17,000 file downloads over a very short period of time. Ended up not being anything. It was part of the business, but it drew some attention, and that's usually you don't see that. So, or you have to buy an insider risk tool to be able to identify that. There's communication compliance in this suite. Communication compliance looks across Teams and email and chat, and it's making sure that in this remote environment that you're maintaining a positive work environment, that that your things that normally would have looked at in the office can be managed remotely this way. Now, the really cool stuff here is Microsoft Information Protection. This was Azure Information Protection. They moved it into compliance, and we work with clients to do a couple things here. So and we do this in the workshops, is manual tagging of data and labeling. So we'll work through a short workshop and show how that happens. But most of the interest comes in the automatic classification. And you think that or the automatic discovery, I put it that way, that there's just terabytes of data out there in unstructured data stores that could present very high risk, inherent risk to organizations if leaked. And there needs to be a process to understand and to categorize and manage that and remediate and manage it. So the tools in the Microsoft platform have that. They have ability to scan cloud repositories using MCAS and on-premise file shares using Azure Information Protection. So we set that up. We show you how that works, and the cool thing about this here too is that we work with SailPoint, and many of our clients are SailPoint partners that have that deployed in their organization. They have a file access manager that ties up really nicely with this, but also it ties back to the identity access management solution. So you can manage access then to those entitlements, those file shares, with your identity and access management solution. Now, we won't go all the way there in the workshop, but we'll help you understand how that fits together. So same kind of process here. We'll start 5 weeks in ahead. We'll set up the technology that'll do the scanning for insider risk and things, and we'll let that run for a little while. When we get together, we'll talk about what is discovered. We'll go through the components of the platform. We'll talk to you about how we approach unstructured data analysis by using a risk-based process, a 5x5 process that identifies the likelihood of breach and then the impact of breach, and then narrows down the focus of where should we start. What are those key areas and business groups and data repositories that we should start looking at? So we walk through that with you. And then again, we do the same kind of a delivery and give you the report plus our view of how that would fit into your organization. Okay, so that's what I want. Those are the 3 that I was prepared for, but 2 more came out recently. There's a secure work from anywhere, and that's really leveraging Teams in a secure way for remote work, and most of us are doing it now. It's Teams as a user interface, but the zero trust framework behind it. So that's a workshop. So if you're concerned about what's happening in Teams, maybe guests are being provisioned, we can run this one. And then endpoint management workshop, another really good one. Think about what's happened to the IT office when equipment goes out of support, or there's an issue with getting new devices. You don't come into the office to get that re-imaged. But using these endpoint management solution, you can use Autopilot and Intune, and you can pick that up from retail. You can have it direct shipped from a vendor, and then it just gets imaged. So that whole sending the machine back and forth just doesn't need to happen anymore. And that really fits into our times now with secure remote work, a world-class user experience, and no IT office to have to go to. But they're available. So here's how you apply for them, or how we do this together. So it doesn't take your Microsoft salespeople They don't have to get involved. We always keep them in the loop. It's good for them to know there's all cool ways that they can help. But all we need is your Office 365 tenant ID, the OMS ID on Microsoft ID, and then a company contact. And we'll take that and we'll submit that into the partner portal, and they'll come back to us and they'll tell us what you're approved for, and then we'll decide what's the next step with you, and we'll get your requirements, and then we'll deliver the session and give you the augmented plan afterward. So we can do 1, we can do 2, we can do 3. It's kind of hard to back them up back to back, but we can stage them and then give you that overall enterprise adoption plan. So I don't know if we have time left to do a couple questions and answers. We've got a number of these things queued up to do, and they're really interesting. Great way to get to know your business and for you to get to know our business. So is there any questions there that we can answer? Brandon, anything come in the chat?
Bob, I don't see anything right now.
Okay. All right. Well, there always are, and they usually come in a little bit later. We want to thank you for attending today. We have another webinar coming up on the 10th. Remember, I was talking about unstructured data. This is the focus of this webinar coming up on the 10th of December. It's governing unstructured data using the data classification and protection engine, and we'll talk to you about the entire landscape of doing that unstructured analysis. So we have our service offering leaders here, Marvin Tansley and Raul Andiverti. They're going to be doing that presentation. So I want to thank you all for joining today. You just need to send us an email at info@edgile.com. If you could put the subject line workshops, we'll get right back to you and we'll talk to you about the approach, and we can apply for you, and then we can see what happens. So I want to thank you very much for attending, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.